Hello, Judge Napolitano. There are proofs that they've changed what's typed on your Facebook page to you and on a mass scale. Wethersfield police have roles of planting fake ties to kids in their databases through time with families now with kids since they were kids. They're making the agency state criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They recorded themselves with intercultural and inter-hate groups and counter to the hate groups' collusions with fake motivation screening and putting fake things in databases at campuses, fake ties and fake natures of ties between students. And the reason this hasn't been overcome yet is how they're using their differences for that. I've never been in them, but there are sexual places next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut. Trinity College is in Hartford, Connecticut. And Central Connecticut State University has like a French model club. I've never been there either. It's supposed to be the same type of place associated with the intelligence community with the transsexual and some KKK theme, black theme, Confederate flag theme. You know, people pretending passions and emotions with the intelligence that works at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. They also have rules with the houses and their family members next to the campuses through time. Like there's a Gill family on Covington Street in New Britain, Connecticut, who's increasingly, since before I ever lived there temporary in an apartment there, also the different owners of that apartment are involved with intelligence communities and their roles with fire departments, with people from Russia and people from Ukraine, in ways that they're implying it has to do. They're demonstrating is plausibly because they have something to do with nuclear, because they've been using the right to lie where they don't, and they've been doing it with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, who have been planting evidences intercities and intra-cities from different parts of Wethersfield with names on my street through time, and with their ties to the same house slash S increasingly involved with wire crimes of Wethersfield police against me, and the roles with police switching and forging names of the court still. They have been refusing to get on paper legitimately since I was a kid, as their roles increasingly screening and using worse ways than they put people in jail for the overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Increasingly, people with the businesses and houses next to Hartford Hospital are involved with Harvard Hospital as a campus of, on the campus of Harvard Hospital. The Institute of Living was founded on it in 1822 as a mental health care side with triages. And they've been putting fake things in those databases with the families that work there as doctors, judges, their family members, the security, the lawyers, with this, all kinds of scams and predicate acts rules with them. Has something to do with their whole bunch of people at the Wethersfield town offices and next to it through time are increasingly involved with putting predicate acts in databases with educators, fake ties and fake natures of ties to people. Has something to do with their roles with the World Trade Center and spots next to it, including the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan next to the World Trade Center. Right before the court, the same names involved with that court from other locations, with the names there in the court's names. They switched timely stamped legal papers, the court itself, from inside the court, and changed the date shown to the panel of judges right before the World Trade Center attack in the court right next to it, no, from inside the court. And names on both sides of that case, interstates, are involved increasingly with predicate acts against me. And also, they don't even know themselves because the news has been changing people. News has been faking people's communications about the World Trade Center with themselves and with others. And they have been changing what others said about that. They have been lying and changing the outcomes of legal cases as collusion slash S with all natures of crime scenes increasingly, including preemptively, even. All this is recorded, but no one follows mandated law. And they keep putting the fake transcripts. They invested a whole bunch of natures of identities of the law and identities of roles with the corrections officers in the prisons. They were criminally foreign influence. They show them they need to hide life aggressions. And they use little tricks where they bring things before courts or before police forums. The difference of that, too, they have them individually grouped and together. Whole predicate acts methods recorded where we can observe how they were motivated to it relative to what I caught them doing with names at next to each of the campuses I went to, who had time collusion /S with people named Scalora and people at the World Trade Center. Increasingly educators of a Dan Keene and people associated with a Keene family and their neighbors, like Enzo Fienza has relatives there, and with a whole bunch of people on and off Two Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, involved with judges and prosecutors, and that's next to the state judicial branch offices. Also, Wethersfield Pizza House has rules of people with the name Paenza and Paisina, with Steven Stocco with wire crimes and Wethersfield police, refusing to identify themselves, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with his educators, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people, lying about himself and others, with little sick fake creeps around him, too. In other words, little coward Steven Stocco. Get the Wethersfield police on paper and let's see what you told them. All I said over the phone to him is Maria is there. You don't even know me. And she doesn't know me either. She shot me out to make these confessions. And now you're going to have them public. You don't pretend you want privacy. You made shit up. You don't want privacy. We're going to figure out what you want. We're going to figure out, too, what's this Brian Bowen doing, too, with you guys. And with Route 3, with a whole bunch of people tied to this DeMoro family. And the people with the name McCord on all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions planting sequence shifts self-value. In other words, with the court switching and forging names too, because their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. That's why there's some black KKK Confederate flag team, and we had black, white, female judges. And when there was a black female judge, using their syntax too, of the government, ignorant, clear as day, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. On off the judicial branch offices with some black KKK Confederate flag team, people tied to a Phil Colello with some sexual and medical offenders, with houses on Two Route Highway involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also through time. In other words, and I did have a conversation with Enzo Fienza, and that was a year. In other words, that he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed people intercities, intrust cities, and across the street from his house or his cousin's house. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a South Saviella. They didn't need to say his name. He's involved also with people with the name Dillon. Kevin Dillon is one of the people he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Involved with them with predicate acts. Also, people associated with the businesses and locations next to Fox Connecticut News and WFSB. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with organized crimes like WFSB. They attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others and about the World Trade Center attack. There are also collusions with a whole bunch of people tied to the name Mendez and a Phil Colello, further involved with predicate acts with the phones and Wethersfield Police Department. They pretended they had conversations with me as a kid and now as an adult, as the ones involved with Saudi attackers. Increasingly, there's a John DeMoro involved with criminal enterprises and his educators and roles with security guards and probate court judges and prosecutors, and all at the same time. And with my fifth grade teacher, involved with them with mayors and people tied to mayors and the different ways that they're tied to them. Overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people that never have classes together. And people that are in class together put fake change communications together too. And they're putting sequence shifts and predicate acts in databases. Whole predicate acts methods are recorded, which are relative too, because I'm not a lawyer, but clearer than day. Black people's whites of eyes reassigned by the breaching method and reassigned from what our founders communicated about that breaching method that assigned that. Other communicated for nature. Then it communicates with black and white. In other words, it brings revelations. I go into it in my other videos. We should have that all memorized by now. Like, for example, the species body, the fish have two eyes. They look almost exactly like human eyes. They look distinct but non-distinct, simultaneous. But also per that which is not us nor them, but is everything anyways. Anyway, so we can discern it. That's one of the ways we can discern it. We can discern that humanity didn't invent why the fish have two eyes, birds have two eyes. And they didn't invent it. We are being shown the identity of all space/existence, its identity in relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, which comes also with Earth, a special differences value, where and how its identity, like every identity, stays positive and negative, equally to all parts of itself. But then it is a quality of diffusion, where we are parsing how to make more positive or negative. But now it is as a quality of diffusion, where all the means to make positives more and more are only if the self-value rules with criminally foreign influence natures of or criminal insidiousness natures of positives or of truth or of facts rules used to lie, used to screen lies, used to screen motivations. A breaching method was a singular motivation, inseparable from all the other motivations for the people that hurt each other, as arose with those laws that were entrenched before America's founders were born. Entrenched as a torture, extortion, slavery method, three ways manifest, as the body of value, as the scientific value of value, as a human fact, treatment, nature, breaching method is one of the things is the scientific value that is true always. That those laws that were entrenched before America's founders were born were value as. And if we pay attention, the suburbs are manifest in America and Russia and Ukraine the same way. Tactically denatured for torture, extortion, slavery method, and to be a landscape theater. Per that system, the same one against Native Americans. And then Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. It is more probable, excuse me, many ways, and more practical to theorize, let alone to convict. And it's demonstrable. There are proofs that even they took down a mountain. In mountains in America, in Africa, to force roles as shock and awe with responses to what forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded names A through Z, to blame other things, others, ourselves for what it caused. And then it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to defend that more and more, incapable of affording discern, or to be, let alone to protract short words by the sciences unabridged. Like, for example, answers with solutions, what to do with negotiations, foreign policy. We're supposed to not leave out how the breaching method employed foreign policy and needs for wars, leaving itself out, because that's only capable of being because locations, areas, and states have quality aspects and fact treatment nature itself, criminally foreign influence, as nature, with the positive treatments or the negative treatments. Suits and ties, counters, and exceptions are used. They're different. The styles of logic, if we were going to debate that. Just like the debate has stayed with regarding the suburbs. Any honest science would not be able to deny what our founders themselves actually communicated to us. In other words, they did not have free speech. They had to pretend to other, because like everyone did, everyone had to entertain their speech to an extent of collusions, plural, of collusion singular, with that breaching method no one wanted, but then slash plural, where they had to want, they had to pretend other, otherwise be censored and hurt and killed, and everyone around them. To an extent, everyone's syntax had to be entertained collusion slash S against every other name, and there's their own as names A through Z of the human species body of individual bodies. Nature shows that us that all group differences are generated by itself. We could ignore its system with positive, negative, the ways we know, but then further hyper additionally as a way slash ways that we could be led by. Because it's hyper invisible, but still discernible distinctly from how it is. The same, the body of the invisible, but still discernible, like the parts of speech. All the names of the verb, like a participle, present participle, past participle, verbal, gerund, predicate, names for a verb. Hyper additional. They're all about the invisible, but still discernible, but hyper additionally. What we are appreciating, what we are capable of discerning, is a greater identity and a more finite identity that the identity of a verb is. Its identity doesn't go away just because it's not being used as a predicate. Its identity doesn't go away just because it's being used as a participle nature, a present participle or a past participle. Its identity doesn't go away because an ing ending is put on it, which makes it incapable of being used as a main verb, no, as a predicate. So we are appreciating the hyper invisible with the invisible, but still discernible. The subjects that we could handle properly, individually grouped and simultaneously, and as a quality of diffusion, they are about the invisible, but still discernible. But they are too also about the hyper invisible, but still discernible. It is that body which we know. It shows us to even just know that every other body of the human species body of individual bodies, there is an extent of the past that they know was true always. There's an extent of truths now that they know is active, true always. There's an extent of truth, like the value of the actual of the seasons that are not even here yet. It is showing us an extent of its body, the identity of all space/existence. And it's coming with its complete identity of relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that 3 ways, equally increasing its value. Per science, how we can discern the hyper invisible but still discernible distinct from the invisible but still discernible. It is an identity that is not just binding, but is expanding as a quality of diffusion, the value of the predicate of English and of the predicate act of the law. I am not a lawyer. Witch trials are about how all, and slavery is about how all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, the difference, their sources, the people next to those people, all natures of conjunction to them, their families, etc., the news at the same time, other natures of communications, locations, the interbranch names, the names of the people, their positions, their campuses, etc. All natures of conjunction, they were planting the same sequence shifts at the same time. They're planting the same delusions. And they're planting the same collusion /S, for example, still replacing and self-valuing, having been replaced, the scientific value from inside the communications of James Madison's and of the founders behind him and his plan. Then further as him as a president. But it's important to understand how that we were supposed to refer to them plural as him singular. So there wouldn't be any, in other words, demonstrably, they didn't say that. Why? But they said, in other words, they had to count and force other founders at key locations in more than 13 colonies. In other words, they had to force people to have no, because everyone was tortured, extorted, and was fact treatment nature enslaved, therefore physically, sickly distinctly too. And the breaching method we use, functionally, how sickly non-distinctly would be left out by everyone. even though it was simply non-distinctly hurting everyone. Everyone could self-value that as means to unify and make everything better for everyone at once, which nature wants us to do or sense. Nature wants us to think and be like a human species body of individual bodies. And with a semi-nature relationship to its complete identity, the whole species body that we simultaneously can't be, but we can't help not be, distinctly, non-distinctly. And we're supposed to contemplate why and how. We're supposed to have our contemplation, our time of our for what's true always. We're not supposed to value the seasons, being able to discern their value before they get here. Even if they never get here, they are only increasing value. Where value matters most. Where value equals nature as value, / value as nature. And the opposite sequence, nature, is true conversely. Value as nature / nature as value. Simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. How we could observe. So, but we have people, the nature debate contains, oh, that's not what would have been written or what's written. And people want to, oh, you know more than Einstein, like, for example, relativity. Nature, we have black people's whites of eyes. That's relativity / hyper relativity. Because again, we are shown by nature's identity, its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that. The other species' bodies have two eyes. They have quality aspects in nature distinct from ourselves, but also non-distinct. And again, they are simultaneous. But per that further, not just hyper simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. In other words, everything, including the simultaneous, is a part of the hyper simultaneous. But it's a part of its complete identity, that of all space / existence, just like your own is. We are shown cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, the plant life too, and gases and water and its elements, gases, their mixture coming through the body of life. The body of Christ has to do with this, has to do with cipher too, because already the campuses of the republic for which we stand and of the exceptions and exception nature it valued to be and stay led by the hyper invisible but still discernible, and be contemplating to be making sure we're being led by that which is true always, and also further positive unto itself. Here, where we are a special difference, and Earth is a special difference, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper simultaneously, to show us the same thing, / S, the extent of its body that we can discern, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that. It also comes with it distinctly to the order of, or to the finite details of the order of the finite, and the active, grouped, and or grouped. And it's further the same, distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, possession over itself. Just like you have possession over the parts of your body distinctly, and your body's parts have a possession over you distinctly, but also non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but also per that further hypersimultaneously. So we have the hyper evidential that can be used to show remote use / uses of the names of the people of the sciences as a certain type of victim / hyper victim predator / hyper predator. In other words, per the breaching method, forgiveness is so we can show what is actually recorded as means to discern other things, others, ourselves, were effectively, originally, and still maintained, effectively forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be blamed for things that nature itself and that our founders communicated to blame on the human fact, treatment, nature breaching method that was entrenched. More than 13 colonies, northern colonies and southern colonies, and with slavery against everyone. Fact, treatment, nature, torture, extortion, slavery against everyone, sickly distinctly, and against black, northern colonies, southern colonies, and then America's founders were born. That's a key distinction. See, this breaching method has us divided and conquered, but also has it and has had it the same way at countries A through Z. That's really why, how even since before cars, since before our founders were even born, there were houses that were built that are still standing. And the colonists, even though they weren't free, they wanted to have other built then, better and safer. But they weren't allowed to speak about that outside of internationally monitored conversations, which is various ways recorded. You know, just hyper by nature itself demonstrated. But also, I read in notes from Central Connecticut State University that there were laws that if you were found out to have been speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations, again, those were already with having had slavery with black, white, entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. Same method that had been sustained against countries A through Z and against Native Americans. Against Native Americans, it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded all natures of campuses and exceptions and exception nature to be defended syntactically in ways that increasingly can't defend that, and for it to be appreciated properly, how nature's hyper native, hyper simultaneous, distinct identity is inseparable from all other things. There are three natures. So there are three natures of native resistors to the breaching method, where no one knew how to respond properly because no one understood properly what was going on. There are proofs. It was a predicate acts with facts method that forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people to respond to it as the names of the human species body of individual bodies and of its systems further hyper additionally where we are ground location /S. That a human fact, human nature, hyper archetypal criminal enterprise has taken possession of. I'm not a lawyer, but it is more probable in many ways, and it is more practical to theorize, let alone to convict, that this is not just what the devil is about, but it's why it's what the Shaytun is about. And I don't know. I only know about Islamic culture to a part at the beginning of the Quran that says all that matters is if someone's honest about are they going to believe in the use that we should call the name of all space existence Allah or not. And it says even to love the people who aren't honest about it. And it obligates the person who's a Muslim to not pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. It says all that matters is if they're going to be honest about the scientific value, for example, of the name of all space existence. Are they going to call? Do they believe they should call Allah or not? They're proofs that Islam, and then the Old Testament comes with the part up front too that no one knows about. No one will allow to defend it the way it asks to be defended. The beginning of the Old Testament comes with the part that says, "Only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together," and the part that comes before it, and that's before the part with Adam and Eve, and the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the beginning of the Old Testament. It doesn't say defend that. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it, where the identity of all space/existence is parsing, where it is already an identity of relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But it is not just parsing, it is a quality of diffusion. It is contemplating, not hypernaturally, also positive onto itself, how to make more positive. It's an identity of value/value progression that generated all space/existence. Only the extent of it is debatable. But offensively, what is not debatable about it is pretended debatable. This is also relative to where and to how there are all these little tricks and ways that is gotten away with. How we have obligations syntactically to address the predicate acts with facts method/methods associated with having replaced, with a breaching method having replaced, with nature communicates, with black pupils, whites of eyes. For example, how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. And the same color eyes we have are white and black. Which being shown by nature's identity, its identity relationship to itself and the value of that. We're being taught about similarity and difference simultaneously, /hyper simultaneously. Again, because the other species bodies and things that they didn't invent and that we didn't invent. And we are being demonstrated that too. We are having that demonstrated to ourselves. Science shows that it is more probable that God was used as a variable. Like, for example, Boolean logic, A, therefore B. Like, in other words. But see, again, it is functional how there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. Now has distinct identities, distinct parts of itself. Like that part of the hyper invisible but still discernible. As the past, we know that was true always. And or of the past, that part that we know that we don't know about, but we know that it was real. We're being demonstrated that too by what already knows everything, because it already is everything. Even if something is made up, like art, it is a volume science onto its order of the finite, or the smallest finite details, distinctly from how it is onto the active group parts of it, and to the simultaneous. And everything comes with the hyper simultaneous. Everything is the hyper simultaneous. But part of the hyper simultaneous won't mix with matter. And part will only anyway. Just like how we are not it. We are not what invented two eyes of the fish and of us. It invented that. Its identity, to the extent we can discern, its identity in relation to itself, and the value of that is what we're being shown revelations as the value. We're being shown about similarity difference. We're being shown the identity, its identity in relation to itself comes with it. It communicates with us, having us shown how it has manifest the species bodies system. There are whole different species bodies of individual bodies and all group differences. It shows us that it is generating all differences to show us its own. We could ignore it, but then our special difference is forced from here. Leaf of Hades is forced relative to its its negative identity of relationship to itself, where and how it is an only increasing identity of volume, as a distinct identity of forever nature, that all things can't help but be. even if you make art as value, and then even if it was burned away. But it's per its system and its roles of positive and negative, and not neutrality, contemplation, but not through systems abridged. Pay attention to how we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged and appreciate how and why we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. Pay attention to how nature uses exceptions, exception nature, in ways that we could follow, because we've had them use fake. In other words, when they read the laws, if people you guys are leaving out exception nature. How anyone can even get away with debating the suburbs are tactically denatured, let alone the cities. And they made suburban/urban while making the straight up urban totally no way to defend that without exhibiting criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw fact, tribute nature, quality aspects of nature. And pretending not to realize. So blaming other things, others themselves. Even when right, doing it exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. The breaching method wanted and needs the kids blaming the leaders without realizing they are above locations, areas, and states. They get to that spot and they aren't allowed to tell the locations, areas, and states, look, we have black people's white bodies. Nature's communicating with that. You have it replaced. Our founders also communicated. The breaching method reassigned, may all entertain things that you can't entertain and afford to be allowed to project. Syntax, Boolean logic, treatments proper, name treatments, difference treatments, therefore name treatments. So the complete identity of yourself is distinct from all the parts of yourself, while it is non-distinct from them. And that is its identity showing you. Every identity has a semi-nature relationship to its own. That one we could discern to an extent. And its identity relationship to itself and the value of that. I mean, we could discern to an extent its identity itself. And it comes with its identity relationship to itself and the value of that. Why and how? We have other species' bodies. For example, it is showing us about difference. There are human species bodies. There are other species bodies of individual bodies. And all group differences come with its demonstration /S of how more and more forever nature is being made. And what most probably and demonstrably is where and how Earth came from. And where and how matter came to being. Its identity, to the extent we could discern. Its identity relationship to itself. And only increasing value of that became and was. And that generated us to this quality of diffusion. Hyper additionally, discernible this way. More and more forever nature is being made through temporary /lasting space nature. We have means as fact tribute nature. In other words, all the nuclear holding countries, say 2 or 3 of them say have a plan. Okay, we could do this and make all great agreements. Oh, but then it's not really fair to that. Then communicate. Let us come in the picture and say we'll do things for the other country that wouldn't agree with that. And we'll say, well, if you do that, we have these securities, and we'll move it as a human species body plan. I'll donate that with pantheism. Counter-tactically donated. You guys are shock and awe when you hear words like tactical, too. Black people, suits and ties, counters, exceptions. In other words, none should shoot until they could discern the whites of eyes, having been replaced by the breaching method, where nature communicates with with black people's whites of eyes, and with our founders' communications about that replaced, and with the motivations and the excuses regarding roles with it, where it's conscious to an extent. That is also being used by the breaching method to hide behind and through. Ugh. It used all natures of location. It used all locations /s, all natures of difference with it, at locations, areas, and states everywhere the species body has a body standing. And then modern religious messages were born. Already had database identities of relativity to everyone that they didn't have possession over. They had already been taken from what the ancients couldn't fathom. The ancients couldn't fathom anyone would forget how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, and means out of nowhere. How to interpret and appreciate how nature communicates. Nature couldn't fathom anyone could force, check, hurt, and persuade the entire names A through Z of the entire species body to self-value, hiding that. In other words, but a breaching method made exceptions to it forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded people to defend themselves syntactically and properly. And it made them build upon that without realizing it. More and more being incapable of affording short words proper by appreciation proper of the names of the sciences and or of the people of the sciences, hyper additionally, and or of the difference of that, also used remotely by the breaching method. They use as our subject treatments through ourselves, sensing for the breaching method. How can anyone interpret Immanuel Kant with practical reason properly if you don't have the black people's whites of eyes racket? Right through world wars, psychiatry had roles of all kinds of natures of organized crime and delusions, and differences rackets roles. Black peoples, it is time. Prepare each mind. Vaccines.